The thundering of hooves echoed across the open plains as a dust cloud rose in the distance, drawing Abigail Armstrong's attention away from the laundry she had hung to dry in the warm April breeze of 1878. The 30-year-old widow shielded her eyes from the setting sun, watching as a lone rider approached her modest homestead on the outskirts of Silver Creek, Wyoming territory. It had been 2 years since consumption had claimed her husband Thomas, leaving her alone to manage their small ranch and shoulder the grief that followed. The solitude had become her unwelcome companion, broken only by occasional trips into town for supplies or Sunday services, where pitying glances followed her every move. The rider slowed as he neared the property, his horse lathered with sweat. He was a stranger, tall and broad-shouldered with a weathered face that spoke of years under the harsh western sun. "Madam," he called out, tipping his hat. "Name's Quinn Valenzuela. My cattle drive's camped about 3 miles east. Foreman sent me to ask if you'd be willing to sell some fresh water. Our supply's running low, and we spotted your windmill from the ridge." Abigail hesitated, studying the man. His clothes were trail-worn but neat, his manner respectful. She'd learned caution in her years out west, but turning away someone in need went against her nature. "I've water to spare," she replied. "How many men and cattle?" 20 hands, 500 head of longhorns, heading north to Montana territory." Quinn dismounted with a fluid grace that belied his large frame. "We'd be grateful and can pay fair." "Very well, Mr. Valenzuela. Your men can fill their barrels at the creek that runs behind my property. It's fed by a natural spring and runs clear year-round." She pointed toward the small valley beyond her house. "Just make sure they don't disturb my vegetable garden." "You have my word, Mrs." He paused, waiting. "Armstrong, Abigail Armstrong." A flash of recognition crossed his face. "Thomas Armstrong's widow. I knew Tom from the cattle drives up to Cheyenne some years back. Fine man. I was sorry to hear of his passing." Abigail's throat tightened. "Thank you, it's been 2 years now." "And you've managed this place alone all that time?" "I manage well enough, Mr. Valenzuela." Her chin lifted slightly, a gesture of pride that had become habitual when faced with doubts about her capabilities. "I meant no disrespect, Mrs. Armstrong." Quinn's voice softened. "It's just not many who could. Tom spoke highly of your strength." She hadn't expected that and for a moment couldn't find words. "Your men are welcome to the water," she finally said. "There'll be no charge." "That's mighty generous, but we insist on paying our way." He reached into his pocket and extended several silver dollars. "For your kindness." Abigail accepted the money, knowing it would help with supplies she needed. "I'll have coffee brewing in the morning if any of your men pass by." Quinn smiled, revealing a warmth that transformed his rugged features. "That's an offer they'll not refuse. I'll be back with the water wagons at first light." He tipped his hat again, remounted his horse, and rode off toward the cattle drive's camp. Abigail watched him go, surprised by the brief moment of connection. It had been so long since she'd had a conversation with someone who knew Thomas, who spoke of him without the awkward pity that usually accompanied his name. That night, a sudden spring storm swept across the plains. Rain hammered against the roof of her small but sturdy house, and lightning illuminated the dark landscape in brilliant flashes. Abigail sat by her window, watching the fury of nature unleash itself, wondering if the cattle drive had found adequate shelter. Near midnight, the storm's intensity increased. Wind howled through the cracks in her window frames, and she found herself unable to sleep. Rising from bed, she wrapped a shawl around her nightgown and moved to the kitchen to make tea. A loud crash from outside sent her heart racing. Grabbing the rifle Thomas had taught her to use, she cautiously approached the door. Another crash, followed by what sounded like a child's cry. Abigail lit a lantern, steeled herself, and stepped onto the covered porch. The rain was still coming down in sheets, making it difficult to see more than a few yards. The sound came again, from the direction of her barn. Holding the lantern high, she hurried through the downpour, her nightgown quickly becoming soaked. The barn door had been forced open and was banging against the wall with each gust of wind. Inside, she raised the lantern and gasped at what she saw. Huddled in the corner of an empty stall were 3 children, a boy who looked about 10, a girl perhaps 7, and a smaller boy no more than 4. They were soaked to the skin, shivering violently, their faces streaked with dirt and fear. "Good heavens," Abigail whispered, setting down her rifle and approaching slowly. "What are you doing here, children?" The oldest boy moved protectively in front of the younger ones. "Please, madam, we didn't mean no harm. The storm caught us and we just needed shelter." "Where are your parents?" Abigail asked, kneeling to their level. The boy's expression hardened. "Ma died last winter, Pa's." He hesitated, glancing at the younger children. "Pa's not here." Something in his tone told Abigail there was more to the story. "What's your name, son?" "Samuel, madam. These are my sister Emily and brother Daniel." Abigail's heart ached at the sight of them. "Well, Samuel, you and your siblings can't stay out here. Come to the house where it's warm." The boy hesitated. "We don't want to be a bother." "It's no bother. I've got dry clothes and hot food." She extended her hand. "Come along now." Reluctantly, Samuel nodded. Abigail helped them to their feet, noticing how thin they were beneath their wet clothes. Daniel, the youngest, could barely stand, so she lifted him into her arms. His small body was cold against hers, and she quickened her pace back to the house. Inside, she stoked the fire and brought blankets. "Let's get you out of these wet things first." She found old shirts of Thomas's for the boys and a nightgown for Emily. After they changed, she sat them by the fire and prepared a simple meal of bread and soup. The children ate ravenously, confirming her suspicion that they hadn't had a proper meal in some time. As they warmed up and their hunger abated, Abigail gently tried to learn more. "Samuel, where have you been living? You mentioned your father isn't here." The boy exchanged a look with his sister before answering. "Pa works for Mr. Blackstone at the Double B Ranch south of here." "Lester Blackstone?" Abigail frowned. Blackstone's reputation was well known in the area, a hard man who paid little and demanded much. Samuel nodded. "Pa's been gone 2 weeks on a cattle drive. Before he left, he made arrangements with the foreman's wife to look after us, but—" He trailed off. "But what, Samuel?" Abigail prompted gently. "She died sudden like 3 days ago. Fever took her." Samuel's voice was flat, as if he'd seen too much death already. "The foreman, he said we couldn't stay no more. Said we'd have to fend for ourselves till Pa gets back." "So you've been wandering for 3 days?" Abigail couldn't mask her horror. "Yes. We was trying to make it to the next town to find work maybe, but then the storm came." Abigail looked at the exhausted children, her mind made up instantly. "You'll stay here until your father returns." No arguments. She turned to Emily, who was struggling to keep her eyes open. "Now let's get you all to bed." She prepared her bed for the children, insisting they take it for the night while she would use the small cot in the sewing room. As she tucked them in, Daniel's small hand caught hers. "Thank you, lady," he murmured sleepily. "You can call me Abigail," she replied, smoothing his damp hair. "Now get some sleep. You're safe here." Once the children were settled, Abigail sat in her rocking chair, watching the dying embers in the fireplace. The sudden responsibility of 3 young lives should have felt overwhelming, but instead, it filled an emptiness she'd been carrying since Thomas's death. Dawn broke clear and bright, the storm having moved on during the night. Abigail rose early, preparing a hearty breakfast of cornmeal mush, bacon, and eggs. The smell soon brought the children from the bedroom, looking better after a night of proper rest but still wary. "Good morning," she greeted them cheerfully. "Sit down and eat while it's hot." They needed no second invitation. As they ate, Abigail explained that she expected Quinn Valenzuela and some of his men to arrive soon for water. "Maybe Mr. Valenzuela might know when your father's drive is due back," she suggested. Samuel shook his head. "Pa rides for Blackstone. If your friend's on a different drive, he wouldn't know." Before Abigail could respond, the sound of approaching horses announced the arrival of Quinn and 3 of his men. She stepped outside to greet them, quickly explaining about the children before they could be seen. Quinn's expression darkened when she mentioned Blackstone's name. "That man works his hands harder than his cattle and pays them less than half what they deserve." He dismounted, towering over Abigail. "May I speak with the children?" Inside, Quinn removed his hat respectfully as Abigail introduced him. His manner with the children was gentle, asking questions about their father and their time at the Double B. Samuel gradually opened up, revealing that their father, Joel Roberts, had been working for Blackstone for nearly a year, ever since losing their own small homestead to drought and debt. "And your pa said he'd be gone how long?" Quinn asked. "Month, maybe longer," Samuel replied. "Depends on how far south they had to go to find buyers." Quinn exchanged a troubled look with Abigail. "Blackstone's known for these extended drives. Sometimes they're legitimate, sometimes it's just a way to avoid paying his men what he owes them." Abigail's hands clenched in her lap. "What are you saying, Mr. Valenzuela?" "I'm saying these children might be waiting a long while for their father to return, especially if Blackstone decides the man has outlived his usefulness." He softened his voice, conscious of the children listening. "It's not unheard of for men to be left behind in some distant town, told to wait for payment that never comes." Abigail felt a surge of anger at the injustice. "Then they'll stay with me until he returns, however long that takes." Quinn studied her with newfound respect. "That's a generous offer, Mrs. Armstrong. Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything," she replied firmly. After Quinn and his men collected their water and departed, promising to stop by again on their return journey south, Abigail set about making the children feel at home. She showed them around the property, introduced them to the few animals she kept, and assigned simple chores appropriate to their ages. That night, as they settled in the main room after supper, Emily tugged at Abigail's sleeve. "Where will we sleep tonight, Miss Abigail?" Abigail realized she hadn't considered the long-term sleeping arrangements. Her house had only 2 bedrooms, hers and the small sewing room she'd used last night. "Well, for now, you children can continue to use my bed, and I'll take the cot." Samuel frowned. "That don't seem right, you giving up your bed for us." "It's perfectly all right, Samuel, but if we're staying a while," he hesitated, "we could sleep in the barn, we're used to rougher than that." Abigail's heart broke at his matter-of-fact acceptance of discomfort. "No, Samuel. You're not sleeping in a barn. You and your brother and sister deserve proper beds." She glanced around the room, an idea forming. "I'll build them. Build beds." Emily's eyes widened. "Can ladies do that?" Abigail smiled. "This lady can. My father was a carpenter, and he taught me a fair bit before I came west. I've made simple furniture before." She nodded, more confident as the plan took shape. "Yes, I'll convert the storage room off the kitchen. It's small, but with bunk beds along the walls, there should be room enough for the 3 of you." The next morning, Abigail rode into town for supplies. Silver Creek was a small settlement, just a main street with essential businesses: general store, blacksmith, saloon, and a small church. She drew curious looks as she loaded lumber, tools, and bedding materials into her wagon. Widow Armstrong buying building supplies was unusual enough to draw attention. Sheriff Garrett Thompson approached as she finished her purchases. "Planning some improvements to your place, Abigail." She explained briefly about the children, knowing news traveled fast in small towns and preferring to control the narrative. The sheriff nodded thoughtfully. "Blackstone's outfit, huh? I'll send a wire to the sheriffs down the line, see if anyone spotted their drive. Least we can do is try to get word to their pa that they're safe with you." "Thank you, Garrett. I'd appreciate that." As she prepared to leave, Mrs. Beatrice Palmer, the town's most notorious gossip, cornered her. "3 strange children. Abigail, are you certain that's wise? A woman alone taking in unknown waifs. People will talk." "Let them," Abigail replied calmly. "These children need help, and I have room in my home and my heart." Beatrice's lips thinned with disapproval. "It's not proper. If you're determined on this charity, you should at least arrange for the boys to stay with a family in town. A widow housing male children, even young ones. It raises questions." Abigail's patience, normally abundant, frayed. "The only question it should raise, Beatrice, is whether we as Christians will turn away children in need or offer them shelter. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have beds to build." Back at the ranch, Abigail found the children had taken their chores seriously. The chickens were fed, the cow milked, though somewhat unevenly, and an attempt had been made to sweep the porch. Their eagerness to earn their keep touched her deeply. Over the next 3 days, Abigail worked on the beds whenever she could spare time from regular ranch duties. Samuel proved an eager assistant, learning quickly how to measure and saw under her guidance. Emily helped sand the rough edges of the boards, while Daniel's contribution was mainly collecting the wood shavings for kindling. On the evening of the 3rd day, as Abigail was finishing the frame for the second bunk, a rider approached. To her surprise, it was Quinn Valenzuela, alone and without his cattle drive companions. "Mr. Valenzuela," she greeted him, setting down her tools. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." Quinn dismounted, his expression serious. "Mrs. Armstrong, I've news that couldn't wait for our return trip." He glanced at the children, who were watching curiously from the porch. "Perhaps we could speak privately." Abigail's heart sank. She instructed the children to continue their chores inside while she and Quinn walked toward the corral. "What is it?" she asked once they were out of earshot. Quinn removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "We camped last night near Preston's Crossing, about 20 miles south. Came across a man there, a drifter who'd been riding with Blackstone's outfit until 2 weeks ago." "The children's father?" Abigail asked hopefully. Quinn shook his head. "No, madam, but he knew Joel Roberts. Said Roberts had words with Blackstone over his pay being short." Next morning, Roberts was gone. Blackstone told the men Roberts had deserted, stolen a horse and supplies. Abigail's hand flew to her mouth. "But that can't be right. He wouldn't abandon his children." "The man I spoke to didn't believe it either. Said Roberts talked about his kids all the time, was saving every penny to get them back on their own land." Quinn's jaw tightened. 2 days after Roberts disappeared, another hand found blood on rocks near where they'd camped, along with a torn piece of shirt that matched what Roberts had been wearing. When the man brought it to Blackstone's attention, he was paid off and told to keep quiet. "Are you saying Joel Roberts was murdered?" Abigail whispered, horrified. "I'm saying it's a strong possibility. The drifter was too scared to make accusations, but he was troubled enough about it to tell me." Quinn placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm sorry to bring such news, but I thought you should know what you might be taking on with these children." Abigail closed her eyes briefly, gathering her strength. Thank you for telling me. I'll need to find the right way to explain this to them, especially Samuel. He's old enough to understand the implications. What will you do now? Quinn asked. What I already decided to do, give them a home for as long as they need one. She looked toward the house where the children were visible through the window. They've lost too much already. Quinn studied her with evident admiration. You're a remarkable woman, Abigail Armstrong. I'm simply doing what anyone with a conscience would do, she replied, though his praise warmed her unexpectedly. Not everyone has your courage or compassion. He hesitated. Our drive continues north for another week, then we'll be heading back this way. With your permission, I'd like to stop again, perhaps help with anything you need done around the place. Abigail found herself nodding. The children would like that. They've taken quite a shine to you. Just the children? Quinn asked with a small smile. She felt a blush rise to her cheeks, surprised by his directness and her own reaction. I appreciate your concern and assistance, Mr. Valenzuela. Quinn, please. Quinn, she amended, the name feeling comfortable on her lips. After he departed, Abigail returned to her work with renewed determination. These children had lost both parents now, though they didn't yet know the full extent of their tragedy. She would finish these beds tonight, creating something solid and secure in a world that had shown them little stability. Samuel found her still working by lamplight well after dark. Miss Abigail, you should rest. You've been at this all day. She smiled at him, touched by his concern. I'm almost finished with the second bunk. By tomorrow night, you'll all have proper beds. The boy watched her work for a moment. That man who came today, he had news about Pa, didn't he? Abigail set down her hammer, recognizing the perceptiveness in Samuel's eyes that came from growing up too fast. Yes, he did. We'll talk about it tomorrow, Samuel. You should get some sleep now. It's bad news, Samuel said flatly. I could tell by how you both looked. Abigail sighed. Yes, it's not good news. But whatever happens, Samuel, you and Emily and Daniel have a home here with me. I promise you that. The boy nodded, his face a mask of forced stoicism that no child should have to wear. Thank you for the beds, Miss Abigail. No one's made something just for us before. As he turned to leave, Abigail called after him. Samuel, your father loved you very much. Mr. Valenzuela's friend said he talked about you children all the time and was saving every penny to give you a better life. Samuel's composed expression cracked slightly. I know he did, madam. He straightened his shoulders. I'll look after Emily and Daniel now, like he'd want. We'll look after them together, Abigail corrected gently. The next morning, after a restless night, Abigail sat the children down after breakfast. With as much gentleness as she could muster, she explained what Quinn had learned about their father, carefully framing the likelihood of Joel Roberts' death as a terrible accident rather than the probable murder it was. The younger children cried, but Samuel remained stoically silent, only the whitening of his knuckles as he gripped the edge of the table betraying his emotions. I know I can never replace your parents, Abigail told them, gathering the sobbing Emily and Daniel close. But I promise you'll always have a home here with me, for as long as you want it. In the days that followed, grief settled over the household like a heavy blanket. The children went through their chores mechanically, speaking little. Abigail gave them space to mourn while maintaining the routines they needed. She finished the beds and helped them arrange their few possessions in the converted storage room, which now held 3 sturdy bunks with fresh bedding. A week after Quinn's visit, Sheriff Thompson rode out to the ranch with official confirmation. Joel Roberts' body had been found by a hunting party near where Blackstone's outfit had camped. The evidence pointed to murder, but with Blackstone's influence in the territory and the lack of witnesses willing to testify, charges were unlikely. I'm sorry, Abigail, Garrett said as they stood on the porch, out of earshot of the children. I've sent inquiries about any relatives who might claim the children, but so far nothing's turned up. They don't need to be claimed, Garrett. They have a home here. The sheriff studied her thoughtfully. You know, there'll need to be legal arrangements if you're planning to keep them permanently. Adoption papers and such. Then I'll file the necessary documents. These children aren't going anywhere unless they choose to. As May bloomed across the prairie, life at the Armstrong Ranch settled into a new rhythm. The children gradually emerged from their grief, beginning to laugh again and take genuine interest in ranch activities. Abigail taught Emily to cook and sew, while Samuel proved adept at handling the livestock. Even little Daniel found his place, charming the chickens into producing extra eggs with his cheerful chatter. True to his word, Quinn Valenzuela returned in late May, riding in just as Abigail and the children were finishing the evening chores. His face broke into a warm smile at the sight of them working together in the yard. Well now, looks like you've got yourself quite the capable ranch hands, Mrs. Armstrong, he called as he dismounted. The children ran to greet him, bombarding him with questions about his journey and the cattle drive. Abigail watched, noticing how Quinn knelt to speak with Daniel at eye level, how he listened seriously to Samuel's questions about ranch work, how he complimented Emily on her new dress that Abigail had made from old curtains. Over supper, Quinn explained that he'd parted ways with the cattle drive after delivering the herd to its destination. I've been considering settling down in one place for a while, he said, his eyes meeting Abigail's across the table. Riding the trails loses its appeal after enough years. Later, after the children were in bed, Abigail and Quinn sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. A comfortable silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant call of a whippoorwill. You've worked miracles with those children, Quinn finally said. They look happy, healthy. They're remarkable children, resilient in ways no child should have to be. Abigail turned to face him. But I didn't expect to see you back so soon. Surely there are more profitable ventures for a man of your experience than visiting a widow's ranch. Quinn smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. Maybe profit isn't what I'm after these days. He hesitated. Truth is, Abigail, I haven't been able to get you and those children out of my mind since I left. I kept thinking about what you're trying to do here all on your own. I'm managing, she replied, though there was less defensiveness in the words than there might have been weeks ago. No doubt of that, but managing isn't the same as thriving. Quinn leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I've saved decent money over the years. Been looking for the right place to invest it, the right situation. Abigail's breath caught as she realized what he might be suggesting. What exactly are you saying, Quinn? I'm saying I'd like to help if you'll let me. This place has good bones but needs work to be properly profitable. More livestock, repairs to the outbuildings, maybe a proper irrigation system for your fields. His eyes held her steadily. I'm offering my skills, my labor, and my savings as investment in this ranch and those children's future. That's very generous, Abigail said carefully. But why would you do that? Quinn reached over, his calloused hand covering hers gently. Because in all my years riding the trails, I've never met a woman with your courage and heart. Because those children deserve the chance you're giving them. And because... He paused, seeming to search for the right words. Because I think we could build something good here together. The warmth of his hand and the sincerity in his eyes stirred feelings in Abigail that she'd thought had died with Thomas. Fear and hope battled within her. I won't pretend I'm not attracted to you, Abigail, Quinn continued softly. But I respect you too much to rush anything. I'm proposing a partnership first to help make this ranch successful for you and the children. If feelings grow between us, well, we'll face that when the time comes." Abigail withdrew her hand, not in rejection but to collect her thoughts. "The children have had so much upheaval. I don't want them to form an attachment to you only to be disappointed. I understand that concern. Which is why I'm suggesting I build the foreman's cabin that used to stand on the north side of your property. Thomas mentioned it once, said it burned down before you arrived. I could stay there, work the ranch with you. Give us all time to see if this arrangement suits." His expression grew serious. "I'm not looking for a convenient situation, Abigail. I'm looking for a home, a purpose, same as those children." She considered his offer, recognizing its practicality as well as the underlying emotions that had prompted it. "The children would be overjoyed to have you stay. Samuel especially looks up to you." "And their guardian?" Quinn asked softly. "How would she feel?" Abigail smiled, allowing herself to acknowledge the attraction that had been building since their first meeting. "Their guardian thinks it's worth exploring." Quinn's answering smile was brilliant in the gathering dusk. "Then I'll start on that cabin tomorrow." True to his word, Quinn began construction immediately, using lumber he purchased in town. Samuel eagerly assisted, soaking up Quinn's knowledge of carpentry and ranching like a sponge. Emily appointed herself in charge of delivering meals to the workers, while Daniel supervised from a safe distance, offering enthusiastic if impractical suggestions. As May turned to June, the ranch underwent a transformation. Quinn repaired fences, expanded the corral, and purchased additional cattle with his savings. Abigail found herself consulting him on decisions, valuing his experience and judgment. They worked side by side during the days, and in the evenings often sat on the porch talking long after the children were asleep. She learned about his childhood in a small Texas border town, son of a Mexican mother and American father. How he'd taken to the trail at 16 after his parents died in a fever outbreak. The skills he'd acquired, the places he'd seen, the loneliness he'd never acknowledged until now. In turn, she told him about growing up in Pennsylvania, her father's carpentry shop, meeting Thomas at a church social, and agreeing to follow him west despite her family's objections. The years of building their ranch together, the devastating loss when consumption slowly took him, and the struggle to maintain the land afterward. One evening in late June, as they watched a spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Quinn turned to her with unusual seriousness. "Sheriff Thompson rode out to the north pasture while you were in town today. He had news about the children's situation." Abigail tensed. "What kind of news?" "Seems they've located a distant aunt in St. Louis. She's written expressing interest in taking the children." Abigail's heart plummeted. She'd known this was a possibility when she'd started the adoption process, but over the months, she'd come to think of Samuel, Emily, and Daniel as her own. The prospect of losing them was devastating. What did the sheriff say would happen now?" Quinn reached for her hand. "The aunt has requested information about their situation here. Thompson asked my impression of how they're faring with you." "And what did you tell him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The truth. That those children are thriving with you, that they're healing from their losses, that they've found stability and love here." He squeezed her hand. "I also told him that removing them now would be cruel and unnecessary." Tears welled in Abigail's eyes. "Thank you." "There's something else, Abigail." Quinn shifted to face her fully. "Watching you with those children, seeing how you've opened your heart and home to them, it's only made me more certain of what I began to feel the first day I rode onto your land." Her heart quickened at the intensity in his gaze. I love you, Abigail Armstrong. I love your strength, your compassion, your unwavering commitment to doing what's right no matter how difficult. I love the family you're creating here, and I want to be part of it not as your ranch partner or foreman, but as your husband if you'll have me. The declaration, though not entirely unexpected after months of growing closeness, still took her breath away. Quinn, You don't need to answer now, he said quickly. I know it's a lot to consider, especially with this news about the children's aunt. I just wanted you to know where I stand, that I'm here for all of you, whatever comes. Abigail rose from her chair and moved to the porch railing, needing space to order her thoughts. The sunset had deepened, the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Behind her, she heard Quinn shift but remained seated, giving her time. When Thomas died, she finally said, I thought that part of my life was over. The love, the partnership, the family we'd planned to have but never did. She turned to face him. Then 3 children appeared in my barn during a storm, and a stranger rode up asking for water, and suddenly everything changed. Quinn waited, his expression hopeful but restrained. I love those children as if they were my own, Abigail continued. The thought of losing them. She shook her head. But I've also come to love you, Quinn Valenzuela. Your kindness, your integrity, the way you've embraced this place and these children without hesitation. She moved back to him, taking both his hands in hers. Yes, I will marry you. Not just for the children's sake, though I believe having a father like you would be the greatest blessing they could receive, but for my sake too, because you've brought light back into my life when I thought it had gone forever. Quinn stood, drawing her into his arms with reverent gentleness. Abigail, he murmured, before lowering his lips to hers in a kiss that held both tenderness and promise. The following weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Sheriff Thompson helped navigate the legal complexities of the children's situation, arranging for the aunt to receive detailed reports of their well-being and integration into the community. Her response, when it came, surprised everyone. She acknowledged that uprooting the children from their new home would be detrimental and formally relinquished any claim, giving her blessing to Abigail's adoption petition. News of Abigail and Quinn's engagement spread quickly through Silver Creek. Most reactions were supportive, though Beatrice Palmer made pointed comments about hasty arrangements and convenient timing. Quinn's response a polite but firm suggestion that Mrs. Palmer focus her energies on more Christian pursuits. Then gossip quickly became a favorite story retold throughout the town. They were married in early August, a simple ceremony in the Silver Creek Church, followed by a celebration at the ranch that brought together neighbors from miles around. Samuel stood proudly as Quinn's best man, while Emily served as Abigail's maid of honor, with Daniel enthusiastically scattering wildflowers along the aisle. That evening, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep in their bunks, Quinn and Abigail stood on their porch, his arm around her waist as they gazed at the star-filled sky. Mrs. Valenzuela, Quinn said, testing the name with evident satisfaction, has a nice ring to it. Abigail smiled, leaning into his embrace. It certainly does, though I think Samuel, Emily, and Daniel Valenzuela sound even better. Agreed. Quinn turned her to face him, his expression suddenly serious. I want you to know, Abigail, that I'll never try to replace Thomas in your heart. What you had with him was special and should be honored. She reached up to touch his face. And I'll never ask you to be anyone but yourself. We're building something new here, Quinn, something that honors the past but doesn't live in it. She smiled. It started with beds for 3 lost children, and now look what it's become. A family, Quinn said simply, built with love just like those beds. As they sealed this truth with a kiss, the first cool breeze of evening swept across the prairie, carrying the promise of autumn and new beginnings. Inside the house, 3 children slept peacefully in the beds that had been built with such care, secure in the knowledge that they were home at last. On the horizon, the future stretched before them, not without challenges, but faced together, with the strength that comes from finding love when it's least expected and most needed. For Abigail and Quinn Valenzuela, and the children who had brought them together, it was just the beginning of their story.